Welcome back to Auto Tech, where we explore the latest and greatest in the world of high-performance cars and bikes.
This is the Royal Enfield Classic 650, a new bike in their lineup for 2025 that I think might well be the most authentic retro motorcycle that you can currently buy. But the question is, well, is it all chrome, or is it also pleasant to ride out on the road? Absolutely loving the ergonomics on this particular bike. It's really very comfortable and spacious, and you can tell it's got a bit in common with the Supermeter. You can see how the bars are sort of risen up. It's almost like a mustache shape, slightly curving back at the grips here. And yeah, very nice and upright with the back angle, and plenty of leverage too. The saddle, like I say, doesn't feel super low, which I'm actually more of a fan of with this style of bike. I don't like to be scraping the floor, but it does have a really nice wide bit of surface towards the back, almost that tractor seat style appearance, and a bit of a squish to it as well, and so I could definitely see myself doing plenty of miles on this. It's also helped by some fairly soft shocks as well. The fork doesn't feel quite as soft to me though. But then also I really do like the foot peg position. Mid controls are far preferable to me than anything further forward. And it's also quite wide set, which does help with that sense of space. And then also some fairly spongy, large rubber foot pegs that feel comfortable. Now for a bike at this price point as well, I'd say the way that the levers feel is really nice. They're sort of chunky, a nice curved surface to the front of them as well. But mainly the fact that they're both adjustable is a real nice bonus for a sub £7,000 bike with those nice little easy to use span adjusters on the front of each. And yeah, it's very common to see bikes in the sort of budget part of the market with maybe an adjustable brake lever, but quite often not the clutch. And to be fair, the rest of the cockpit feels kind of much more, it still feels really nice on this bike. And then the thing that really separates this one from the rest of the 650 twin lineup is this headlight nacelle, which gives you a bit of the feel of the old Bullets and stuff like that, with a couple of position lights up at the front, and then, well, you've got a tripper pod here. I think that was probably something else on the older bikes, maybe a temperature gauge or battery status or something like that. But yeah, your ignition here, analog clock, a little LCD in the middle, and that just makes this bike feel a little bit more special. And like I say, separates it from the other models in the lineup. If you've not tried out the tripper pod before, I would say it's, it's a nice little bonus. It's a good little feature. If you're not someone who wants your phone mounted on the bars, then this is a nice way to get navigation. It kind of acts like the Beeline device, which you may have seen, in that you pair with your phone, this time using the Royal Enfield app to plot a route, set a destination or something like that. Yeah, and I thought it was impressive and a nice little bonus. No real need to test it out again. It's no different than previous models that have had it. But yeah, like I say, a nice little bonus. Although I do think maybe you won't use it so much if you are someone who likes to mount your phone on the bars. This engine is completely known to me. It's pretty much the exact same as any other bike that it's in. The Interceptor, the Continental, the Supermeter, the Shotgun, the Bear 650, which I tested a couple of weeks back. And maybe there are a couple of little differences to some of the performance figures with the different exhaust systems, but largely they're pretty much all the same, with no riding modes to separate them. There's no TC, there's just ABS. And I think probably some of the micro differences in performance are down to the different shapes of the exhaust, which are mainly done for aesthetics. The only thing I will say about the exhaust system is that I was comparing my Bonneville to this bike earlier today for another video where I'm more broadly talking about the Bonneville lineup versus the 650 twins. And I just noticed getting off my bike that it has a lot more depth and bass to the exhaust note. And while part of that is probably down to the fact that the engine is substantially bigger, There still must be a little bit of how they've tuned the silencer, and so I would like a touch more richness perhaps out of this one too. I think fundamentally the 270 crank in a parallel twin's always going to sound at least somewhat pleasing. But I'm hearing mainly the sound of the engine, I think, as opposed to the exhaust. And so maybe something a little more fruity at the pipe would do wonders for this bike. So like I say, I was coming into this ride with, moderate expectations of what this engine can do. And that is absolutely true. At 47 horsepower, 50 odd newton meters of peak torque, with a 200 and odd kilo bike, it's not going to fly when you open the throttle. But really, if you're looking at this bike, you're not really expecting something that's going to have your face pulled back under the G-force of acceleration. And I'd also argue, out of the whole lineup, it's probably one of the least sporty. Maybe if you bought a Continental 650 GT, you might expect something that's fairly quick. But looking at this bike, you're not going to say it looks fast even standing still. It is pleasant though, in terms of the smoothness of the throttle, probably helped by the fact that it's not that punchy. Like I say, it sounds nice. There's just enough torque there for the odd overtake and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say, it's a big deer or something. I wouldn't say necessarily that thrills are a reason to buy this bike, but more so the character and feel, which being an air-cooled twin these days is getting rarer and rarer, and it does give it an element of authenticity and its retroness. When I was just talking about how comfy this bike is, I did mention the shocks. I mean, they're fine, but definitely they've probably given it softer shocks than some of the other bikes in the lineup to give it that comfy, easygoing vibe. But I will say, despite that, and the fact that you've got the big front wheel and the spoke wheels, which are probably a bit weightier than cast wheels, it still goes side to side fairly briskly. And I wouldn't say that the handling is a limitation of it. For the sort of riding that it's intended for. It's easy to get on with. You don't necessarily feel like it's a super weighty bike, and you're not going particularly fast anyway, so it's not like you need that twitchy handling to get it round a corner. One potential quirk, I suppose, of this bike, and to be fair, it's also true of the super meter and the shotgun, is that it is quite typical of a cruiser, I guess, in that the front brake is pretty soft, and you actually have to rely on a lot of rear brake to get the bike stopped quickly. Like I say, if you look at the, certainly the American market with Harley's cruiser-style bikes or Indians bikes, it's very, very common to have a big rear disc that's almost the same size as the front disc, and despite some of them being pretty hefty bikes, they might only run a single disc at the front, and so it becomes not just a choice, but potentially a requirement to give it a bit of both brakes to stop. And while that's not particularly often seen, let's say, in the Enfield lineup, since they started rolling out these 650 cruiser-style bikes, the three that I've mentioned, this seems to be the preferred braking setup that they go for. And there's not a great deal going on with the front brake. It's not bitey. But certainly, it's like the rear brake gets you. See, the braking force just flipped my second camera there. Yeah, it's the rear brake that will get you sliding forward on the seat and into the tank, and much less so the front brake. Normally, I'll do a little section on tech, but I don't really think there's much to go into. You do have a little info button on the left-hand switchgear there on the back. That skips through the little LCD in the middle of the nacelle there. And of course it gives you stuff like odometer, trip meters, that sort of thing. There is an eco indicator as well. It says eco on the dash there. If you're riding with a very steady throttle, giving you a bit of encouragement. And you've got a fuel gauge in there as well, which is nice to see, which isn't always the case on retro bikes or affordable bikes. Other than that, yeah, you got lights, starter, hazards. I think that's pretty much it. And the tripod, which I've already covered, for what is a very simple bike.
£1,000, well, I think it can quite easily be forgiven. It's a beautiful looking bike on the whole. The engine is proven and has its charm, if not knocking your socks off. And it's also a comfy bike that's pleasant and easy to ride. This is definitely one to take for a spin if you like your retros properly old school. And as long as you're not expecting sports bikes levels of performance, then I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy yourself.